I remember hearing a story about a rabbi walking home on the path back to his house back in the old country. And he was walking down the path and he sees on the side a bush, and in the bush is a child. And the child is crying. The rabbi turns to the child and goes, "My child, what's the matter?" And the child says, "Nobody found me." And he says, "Are you lost?" He says, "No." He goes, "I don't understand." And the child says, "I'm playing hide and seek and nobody found me." And the rabbi goes, "Isn't that the point? Like, yeah, you win. Why are you crying?" And the boy says, "Well, because they all stopped looking." And that little story is what this next week is all about. We're entering into one of the most powerful yet confusing times of the year. It's called the 9 days Tisha B'Av. Now, today is the beginning of Av that leads till next week is Tisha B'Av. And this week, culminating in the 25-hour fast, is meant to be the time of mourning for the destruction of the temple. Here's the problem. Most of us do not mourn, do not miss the temple. We never saw the temple. We never grew up with it. It's never in our world. We don't even know what it really looks like. And so we don't know what we're missing, so we don't know what to mourn. And so the rabbis are giving us not only a 3-week period, which we're in the middle of, but a more intense 9-day period, and then a culmination in a 25-hour fast called Tisha B'Av for something that we don't really miss. So many of us play the game. We pretend we're upset. And usually what we're really upset about is not missing the temple, it's that bad stuff happened to us since, so we get mad at that. That feels closer to home. And if you go to programs in Tisha B'Av, you'll see them talking about the Holocaust. Because the Holocaust feels like it's sad for us now, but the temple's not sad. The rabbis are telling us the destruction of the temple, mourn it. And for many people, we're like, sure. So what's going on? So let's break it down a little bit. The temple, this destruction of the temple wasn't about a building. Of course we're mourning the actual temple, but that's not why we're mourning. We're talking about a time where God's presence was felt in the world in a much different way. Once Solomon built the temple, and God rested, so to speak, his presence in a different way, the whole world changed. The whole path of connection changed. There was a place of open miracles. There was a place of real spirituality. There was blessing that came to the whole world through the channel of the temple. There's a place where nations from the world would bring sacrifice. For a brief period of time, the temple wasn't a building. It was the representation of the way the world should be. It was a world with divine presence, with blessing in materialism, where materialism doesn't take you away from your life, it brings you greater life, of depth, of purpose, of peace. People weren't fighting all the time. Darkness didn't prevail. It wasn't a world of confusion. The bad guys didn't win. Now, there are times when we had a temple when bad stuff happened, but the temple itself, in its glory, brought incredible blessing to everything around it. Clarity, connection. We're living at a time where we don't even know what that's like. We don't even know what it's like to live in a time where the good guys win. We don't even know what it's like to live in a time where leaders are the most respected people for their qualities and their ethics and values. We don't know what it's like to live in a time where we see divine presence everywhere, where the nations of the world bow to something bigger than themselves. We don't even know what that's like. We don't even know what it's like to live in a time where we're not engaged in darkness. We're one sliver of light, one sliver of connection, one story that's too coincidental, one moment where I feel moved or inspired for a second is unbelievable that we circulate it around and around and around and around to give each other encouragement because it's so hard to come by. We're living in the darkest of darkness. We're living in, so to speak, the time of Hanukkah, if you will, where one little candle we light at night is what we're looking for. There was a time where we lived in light, where the world lived in light. And that's what we're mourning. We're mourning the way the world is supposed to be. We're mourning the way our lives are supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this hard to raise families and make livings and not fight, and to have faith in our leaders and to have faith in society. It's not supposed to be this hard. It's supposed to be. The world is supposed to be a world in which the spiritual elevates the physical. And we all have plenty. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're mourning. Every year, the Torah, which is so brilliant, says, you guys settled. You're settling again. We don't settle in Judaism. We never settle. We always fight for greatness. Don't settle. Take 3 weeks off, and it will get worse. It will get intense, more intense. You'll get to 9 days, and then the week of, and then Tisha B'Av. Take it. I know it's going to feel weird. I know you're going to feel like I don't really miss it, but think about it. Connect the dots. Bring it into your life. Have bigger visions. Have bigger aspirations. Expect more from this world. And realize that you don't have it because that temple's destroyed. And you haven't been able to bring the divine presence back. And mourn the disconnect between what we have and what we could have. Imagine a world where the whole world bows to the creator of humanity. Every knee bows to God. Imagine a world where it's light spiritually. Imagine our lives where we're not competing all day, where we trust people. People want the best for each other. And see where we are and mourn the gap. Because that's what God wants for us. And He wants us to want it ourselves. You see, the greatest tragedy of Tisha B'Av is that God's hiding, but we stop looking. As the Siva Shalom says, you want to know what brings Him back? Our desire for Him. And so the rabbis created this incredible time that we're in right now, where we have to stop settling. We got to step off the treadmill and spend a few days dreaming. The verse says, Hayinu kecholmim. We were like dreamers, dreaming about what life is supposed to be with godliness here. And then mourning that we don't have that. And maybe if we can deter, just step off that mediocre treadmill and look up and dream about a life with the divine and feel in our hearts that we're missing something, we will have done our job of mourning. And that desire for God may bring Him closer and create a world where the temple is rebuilt.